Welcome to tINFOil bonnet. Today we will be discussing trauma desensitization propaganda, and the title of the presentation is Imaginary Friends and Dissociative Identity Disorder, a society programmed to ignore trauma. So here's a quick presentation overview. We will first be discussing imaginary friends in the media, dissociative disorders, dissociative identity disorder, dissociative identity disorder in children, and the glorification and demonization of DID in the media. We will then analyze a clip of Britney Spears where I believe she has dissociated into an alter personality. Then we will discuss possible treatments such as EMDR, go into support and education, and then I will show you my reference pages and make sure I have all the links available for you in the description box. Did you have an imaginary friend growing up? Well, I didn't. Around 35% of children aged 3 to 7 claim to have imaginary friends. Now, this includes stuffed animals or toys, and it is a sign of usual behavior if a child recognizes that they are pretending and is making a stuffed animal talk, for example. So, imaginary friends can be normal, especially with the media influences of today, but it is also a common sign displayed amongst children who have been abused. And some stats on that, 15 to 43% of American children have gone through trauma or abuse. And of these children, 3 to 15% of them will develop PTSD. And what they have found is that imaginary friends can often be developed as a coping mechanism for children to better handle trauma. And what the media does is they normalize this behavior, and it can make trauma or signs go unnoticed, especially with children who have dissociative disorders. It is also estimated that around 2/3 of child abuse cases aren't even reported. So that makes you really wonder how many children are being abused and going unnoticed. I personally believe that the media has put imaginary friend programming in movies so that genuine trauma symptoms from abused children go undetected or ignored. Imaginary friends in the media. So here we have a list of the imaginary friend programming I was talking about and some examples of that. In Dexter's Lab, they have an imaginary friend that you can see up in the middle. The Shining, the young boy has an imaginary friend named Tony. It's also believed that the theme of that movie was that he was actually being abused by his father. And some indicators of that is that in the beginning he had a broken arm, which when the doctor asked about, the mother played off as a typical abused spouse and said that he just ran into the door. And then also the father, Jack, is seen reading a Playgirl magazine, and on the cover it's a title that says Incest, Why Parents Sleep with Their Children. So that's quite interesting to look into that. I will make sure I have the link to that theory if you're interested. Also, we have Pete the Dragon. Here we have a young boy who has been abandoned and is an orphan who has created an imaginary dragon that helps him cope with the world. And, if you are suffering from one of these disorders, it can go undetected within yourself because when you see this in the media or in movies, you think it's normal to actually have these full-on creations of another entity that you really believe is separate from yourself. Also, we have Inside Out, and in this show, it's quite interesting. We have, of course, the imaginary friend that they share, but the internal dialogue too that they have going on is again another programming tool that can be used so that dissociative clients don't realize that they are not experiencing something that is normal. So they think, oh, okay, they have an imaginary friend in the movie, they have different things, people talking in their brain, this is normal behavior. Also, Donnie Darko, of course. That imaginary friend wasn't too helpful to him, but I believe you see the general picture and how propaganda with imaginary friends works. Now we will get into trauma disorders, which can result in dissociation. So dissociative disorders often develop to adapt to severe and prolonged trauma, often which occurred during childhood. Dissociation is on a spectrum, and on the least severe, we have depersonalization and derealization disorder. Now, depersonalization is having a feeling of detachment from oneself, whereas derealization is feeling that the world around you isn't fully real. Some side effects or how these people will feel are emotionally numb, physically numb, they will have a weak sense of self, use deadpan speech, and trouble forming relationships. They also kind of view their life as if it wasn't really happening to them and as if they're watching life as it were a movie. Also, these people can suffer from having an altered sense of time, brain fog, anxiety, or having trouble recognizing familiar people, places, or objects. On the middle of the spectrum, we have dissociative amnesia. Now, this is where they will block out or forget important personal information, so such as a house that they were abused in as a child. Even though it was a neighborhood house, they completely block out any memory related to the house, or they will completely block out a person, especially if they were abused by them. They will block out all events related to that person, even if they were important events. So they will be missing, family reunions, for example. Then on the most severe side of the dissociative spectrum, we have DID, dissociative identity disorder. And this is where a person has problem having a complete identity and feeling whole. They feel like they are many parts. There's great information on this with going through osmosis.org. I will make sure I link a great video discussing dissociative disorders if you feel like further educating yourself on the topic. To elaborate further on dissociative identity disorder, we will now go into how it is classified and its history. So DID used to be known as MPD, multiple personality disorder, but it has always been classified as a dissociative disorder and not a personality disorder. This is important because DID is characterized by identity fragmentation rather than a proliferation of separate personalities. DID is also rather common and affects around 3% of the population, although I believe this number to be higher. Most people with DID have a mix of dissociative and post-traumatic symptoms, as well as non-trauma related symptoms. Amnesia in people with DID can take on many different forms, including amnesia for significant events in the past, like we were discussing earlier, or for events in everyday life. DID is characterized by the presence of two or more identities or personality states that repeatedly take control over the individual's behavior, accompanied by the inability to remember important personal information. DID stems from severe repeated child abuse and often sexual, physical, and emotional trauma. And the trauma results in neural pathway creation and closures, which then enables dissociation. I can leave some links that can further go into that subject later on. Also, DID affects women more than men. DID is also something that is common amongst satanic ritual abuse victims. Although just because you have DID does not mean that you are an SRA victim. It's just there is a correlation between SRA victims having DID. Understanding dissociative identity disorder in children. So I found this great article in Psychology Today titled Understanding DID in Children, and I will go ahead and read you some portions of that article. So here it states, common signs in children with DID are having an imaginary friend well into school age. Children with DID are much more likely to develop imaginary friends at a younger age, 2 or 3 years old, and often have more of them. These friends seem very real to the child with a great deal of reality confusion. The imaginary friend does not always act in the best interest of the child. The child may truly be unable to remember the misbehaviors, blaming it on the imaginary friend. Now, healthy developing children better appreciate the difference between real and pretend, and that their imaginary friends are in fact not real. They also tend to discontinue this kind of play after the age of 10, whereas children with DID do not. The normalization and glorification of alter egos in DID. So here we have a bunch of celebrities showing their alter egos. We have Slim Shady, who is the alter ego of Eminem. We have Prince here displaying his alter ego. Take note of his hand gesture. Beyonce's alter ego, Sasha Fierce. Lola, who is J-Lo's alter ego. And again, I would just like to reiterate the fact that seeing these alter egos out there normalizes this behavior. And this allows for people with dissociative disorders for their disorder to go undetected amongst other people and even amongst themselves. They then begin to rationalize having another identity in them because they see that it is a normal thing to have due to the media. Serena Williams is also interesting to look into. She has a reality show where her family and her discuss her different alter egos. She even states that one of her alter egos is very tough and bitchy, and she's the alter ego who performs in the tennis matches. Nicki Minaj is also quite fascinating to look at. She has many alter egos. One that is particularly fascinating is Roman. Believed to be named after Roman Polanski, which she states is a young boy that lives inside her that was created out of rage. This boy is also very mischievous and evil. There's also a huge demonization of DID, especially with shows such as the United States of Terror and the movie Split. Now, in the United States of Terror, many say this is not an accurate representation of DID because every one of her alters is there to destroy her and not to help her. Also, you have the movie Split, where one of his personalities is actually named Beast and is some sort of demon that lives inside of him. Now, dissociation is actually a good thing and was a protective mechanism that developed in order to cope and survive severe trauma. So DID really shouldn't be stigmatized as something shameful. Now, yes, there are alters that do participate in self-harm, but for the most part, dissociation is something that is just there to help you cope. Britney Spears. So next we will see a clip of Britney Spears, which was taken by her handler, in my opinion, which shows possible signs of a dissociation disorder. Now, there are reports of amnesia and a loss of time in the clip. She displays confusion and a lack of understanding regarding reality, and she also exhibits an adolescent demeanor, meaning she was acting quite teenage-like by burping and some of the comments she was making. What's interesting in the video is she discusses a movie that she wants to see. She thought, I believe the movie is Spawn, she thought it was still playing in theaters, and then was shocked to find out that it is actually out on DVD and that it could possibly be in the bus already. Then Kevin makes fun of her and states that he had watched the movie already on DVD 4 months ago. She's then very confused by this and then states that she feels that she's missing out on life, which shows, again, a loss of time. Her handler then blames it on her partying, but Britney is legitimately confused by this response and then starts talking about time travel. She asks if time travel is possible and starts discussing Back to the Future. Then Kevin mocks her for talking about time travel, and then she retorts by saying it's real. At the end, she says that she thinks some people are ahead of us in time. Then Kevin responds that maybe, but they won't ever tell the world. They wouldn't tell nobody shit, which to me shows that he is enabling her dissociation and is aware of his surroundings and what is going on with her, whereas she is not. I would be very interested to see what you all think about the video, so please leave a comment.
I'm ugly. No. My jaw hurts.
That doesn't mean you're ugly. Dude, we're gonna do clips of you burping.
I want to see that movie. Listen, what are you doing? You're zooming in. You're doing something weird.
I'm listening.
Why are you looking through the peephole? You're acting like a cameraman. Stop looking through the peephole.
Okay.
Listen.
You want to see the movie? Let's go see it.
Well, when is it going to be playing? Oh, no. When did Spawn come out? I want to see that.
We'll have to go buy it on DVD. It might even been on the bus.
Huh?
It might have been on the bus.
Huh? Really?
Yeah?
You're lying.
I'm not lying.
It was really on the bus?
I said it might have been on the bus. I don't know.
That's like a new movie and stuff.
Baby, that movie is... I watched it fucking 4 months ago on DVD.
Where have I been?
Over here? You've been on tour.
I'm confused because I feel like I've been missing out.
Missing out on what?
On life.
I really don't think that that's the truth.
You think this is what I have to talk about.
Okay.
I feel like I've been missing out on life.
Like what part of life?
Life. Like things and things going on. Like I feel like I'm behind or something. I know that sounds so weird, but
No,
I
it
do.
doesn't. It's all the partying.
Huh?
It's all the partying.
What are you talking about, all the partying?
That's why you feel that way.
What's that supposed to mean?
Would you rather go out or would you rather go watch the movie?
Huh?
Would you rather go out, if you had a choice to go out or go watch a movie, what would you want to do?
I'd go watch that movie and just drink at home. But what I'm trying to say is, do you ever feel like you... Like, because some people... Have you ever seen Back to the Future?
Mm-hmm.
Is that possible? To time travel speed?
No.
Yes, it is, Kevin.
Okay, but not that we know of.
Maybe, I think people can do that, and I think some people are ahead of us.
Well, maybe. But they would never tell the world. They wouldn't tell nobody shit. Could you imagine how many people would try to go back and change?
Treatment for DID or PTSD. So now we'll go over some effective therapies for some of these disorders. Psychotherapy is a very common one, but one that I have heard is most effective is EMDR, eye movement desensitization reprocessing. Now this is a therapy which helps you process old memories while remaining fully conscious using bilateral stimulation. This is not hypnosis. The client actually has control the entire time. The bilateral stimulation helps integrate the brain hemispheres, allowing for a clearer processing of information. Jamie Marek has a bunch of great videos on YouTube that I will link in the reference pages that go into EMDR and show what a demo session would look like. Also, using EMDR in conjunction with art therapy has proven to be quite beneficial. I know Fiona Barnett recommends that, especially for DID. Some coping skills that you can use when you have these disorders and you're processing traumatic events. You can, of course, use coping skills such as physical activities like yoga, biking, hiking, journaling, and mindfulness and grounding exercises are great skills to help you process trauma after the EMDR session or after therapy. Also, a little more information on EMDR. It is over 30 years old, created by Francine Shapiro. I can do a video some other time on EMDR if people are interested. So after this, we'll go into support and education. Since there are so many trauma victims, I believe it's very important to educate yourself on trauma disorders and learn how to best show support to loved ones that could possibly be suffering from trauma. Now, if you do have a friend presenting with these symptoms, reach out and show love and support, but don't ever diagnose or force a trauma victim to disclose past memories or process past events. Do show understanding and respect their boundaries. Allow them to disclose and discuss it at their own rate, and it's good for them to just know that you're going to be there no matter what they're going through. So just showing support is the most important thing you can do. Also, it's wise to educate yourself. Dissociative disorders are on a spectrum, and everybody is different, so there's a lot of information out there. You can refer to my links on further explanations of DID or treatments such as EMDR, or do your own research. Someone else who I'd recommend you to look into is Fiona Barnett. She had DID and successfully integrated. She's also a SRA victim, and she has a lot of insight on how she was able to cope with the trauma and how she was able to integrate. I would also recommend you to look into other YouTubers that have DID. I will go ahead and link some YouTubers that I follow personally. So I hope that you have a better understanding now of what I believe imaginary friend programming is, and have a better insight into what DID is. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a comment. If you didn't, drop a comment. Either way, have a good day, and thank you for watching.